The Chicago Strangler, the serial killer pattern nobody stopped. Between 2001 and 2018, women across Chicago began disappearing. Some were found in alleys, some in abandoned buildings, some near garbage bins, vacant lots, and train tracks. Most had something disturbing in common. They had been strangled. At first, the deaths looked unrelated. Different neighborhoods, different years, different victims. But eventually people started noticing a pattern. A pattern so disturbing that some investigators and community activists began asking a terrifying question. What if Chicago had a serial killer operating for years without ever being officially acknowledged? And if that was true, how many victims were ignored before anyone paid attention? Before we continue, kindly subscribe to this channel for more crime stories. The case that became known online as the Chicago Strangler is one of the most controversial unsolved mysteries in modern American crime history, because officially, police have never confirmed the existence of a serial killer connected to these deaths. But according to independent researchers, former investigators, and community activists, dozens of women across Chicago died under eerily similar circumstances over nearly 2 decades. Most were Black women. Many struggled with addiction, poverty, or unstable housing. And many of their cases received very little media attention. Today, the question still remains. Was this truly the work of one killer? Or was Chicago witnessing something even more complicated? In the early 2000s, women's bodies began appearing across Chicago neighborhoods, especially on the south and west sides. The victims were often discovered in abandoned buildings, near vacant lots, behind dumpsters, or in isolated alleyways. In many cases, there were signs of strangulation, and as years passed, the similarities became harder to ignore. The victims were often women living in vulnerable situations, women whose disappearances were not immediately prioritized, and women whose deaths rarely became major headlines. For years, these cases remained disconnected in the public eye. But online communities and independent researchers started collecting data, and what they found was deeply unsettling. By the late 2010s, activists and journalists began comparing dozens of unsolved cases. The similarities stood out immediately. Many victims were found outdoors, many disappeared alone, and many were discovered strangled or suffocated. Some victims were found only miles apart, others were discovered years apart, but under nearly identical circumstances. And then another disturbing detail emerged. The majority of victims were Black women. Critics argued this may have contributed to the lack of national attention. Because while some serial killer investigations dominate headlines for years, many of these women's stories barely reached beyond local news reports. Eventually, online maps began circulating. Maps showing clusters of deaths across Chicago. And the nickname started spreading. The Chicago Strangler. As public concern grew, Chicago police responded carefully. Officials stated there was no confirmed evidence linking all the cases to a single offender. And technically, they were right. Not every victim died under identical circumstances. Not every case shared the same forensic evidence. And not every timeline matched perfectly. But critics argued something else. Even if every case was not connected, could multiple serial offenders have been operating at the same time? Or had patterns been missed because the victims came from communities that historically received less attention? Former FBI profiler Gregg McCrary publicly suggested that some of the cases strongly resembled serial predator behavior, especially because of repeated strangulation, body disposal patterns, and victim targeting similarities. Still, no official serial killer investigation was ever publicly confirmed. Chicago is one of the largest cities in America, and in cities with high violent crime rates, patterns can become difficult to recognize, especially over long periods of time. Cases get divided across districts. Investigators change, files move, and leads disappear. And if victims come from vulnerable communities, their disappearances may not trigger immediate urgency. That reality became central to the Chicago Strangler theory, because many people began asking, if these victims had come from wealthier neighborhoods, would the response have been different? Would national media have reacted sooner? Would investigators have connected the cases earlier? Those questions still remain deeply controversial. The most disturbing possibility is not necessarily that one serial killer escaped detection. It is that multiple predators may have operated in the same environment for years, an environment where vulnerable women could disappear without immediate nationwide attention. Experts have warned that serial offenders often target victims they believe society will overlook. And in Chicago, many families felt exactly that had happened. Some relatives spent years pushing for attention, years demanding answers, years trying to keep victims from being forgotten, because behind every pattern was a real person, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and for many families, the feeling of unfinished justice never disappeared. Even today, the debate surrounding the Chicago Strangler remains unresolved. No single suspect has been officially identified as responsible for all the deaths. No definitive public conclusion exists. But the controversy changed something important. It forced people to confront uncomfortable questions about media attention, policing priorities, and which victims receive urgency from society. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing is not only violence itself, but the possibility that repeated violence can fade into the background unnoticed. Maybe there never was one Chicago Strangler. Maybe the truth is more complicated than that. But what cannot be denied is that for years, women across Chicago died under hauntingly similar circumstances. And many people believe far more attention should have been given long before the pattern became impossible to ignore. Because when cases remain unsolved for too long, the silence itself becomes part of the story. And somewhere in Chicago's cold case files, the unanswered questions still remain.